Many black women inside the WNBA are resentful that this white woman came in and is getting all this attention.
Rookies have put on quite a season, and it's not just Caitlin and Angel. Rickea Jackson and other rookies are killing it this year.
They've got a star in Clark, and if they play their cards right, they might finally have a chance to be relevant again.
I would say the biggest thing is just you can't take a second off.
If the Fever want to avoid being a one-woman show, they need to start thinking about the long term and consider bringing in some solid players who can really contribute.
No matter who you're guarding, no matter if you're on offense or defense, like you breathe for 1 second and you're not looking at your man and she's on the other side of the court. So
the front office must be feeling the heat right now, and who can blame them? Every decision they make will be scrutinized and criticized.
I think that's the biggest thing is everybody's so skilled. Like, this is the most competitive league in the world because there's not that many spots. So every person that's getting on the floor is really, really talented. So
fans are tired of the same excuses. They want to see a championship-worthy team built around their star player.
I think just, you can't take up one single possession off, whether it's on offense or defense, and always being aware, I think, is the biggest thing.
Clark is giving them hope again, and they won't just sit back while the franchise wastes this chance.
Absolutely lived up to expectations, exceeded them much more so as quickly as we thought coming off that historic draft. These rookies have put on quite a season, and it's not just Caitlin and Angel. Rickea Jackson and other rookies are killing it this year.
The WNBA, specifically the commissioner, it's wild how she manages to upset everyone, no matter which side you're on.
And our veterans have really stepped up. Asia Wilson's having a historic season for the Aces, and Breanna Stewart in New York. So
she's often accused of being racist while also trying to support players who aren't as marketable as Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, and you mentioned all the revenue drivers. We also signed a historic media deal since I was here last.
That's right.
Long-term media deal, which was important for the stability of the league. And as people have been calling it a growth stock, we have a lot of upside.
It's baffling. I don't get why she struggles to give Clark the recognition she deserves, especially when they keep bringing Angel Reese into the mix.
How much did the Olympics help or hurt you?
Well, we do take an Olympic break, but because we had such great momentum going in, including to our All-Star game, our most viewed All-Star game ever. So coming off of that, the women, U.S. women won the gold medal, but it was a highly competitive game against France where there were several WNBA players. So we have now about 17% of our players born outside the United States. So we're kind of globalizing our player population like the NBA and other sports have. So
the stats are clear. Attendance, revenue, and TV ratings all point to Caitlin Clark as the standout this year. Sorry, Angel Reese, but the numbers just don't back you up.
So I think it was a good thing to raise. I mean, I was in Paris. The vibe in that arena for those games was unbelievable. France, Belgium, obviously U.S., France. France being in both gold medal games, men and women, was so exciting because you had the hometown crowd there as well. So I think it was accretive to global basketball.
Here we are again. The commissioner just can't seem to give Caitlin Clark the credit she deserves without going off on a tangent about everyone else.
It's a lot of capital coming into women's sports. We raised capital 2.5 years ago when nobody really was thinking about investing in women's sports. And now we're getting calls, many calls from people, private equity, everybody who wants to invest in women's sports.
And it's honestly ridiculous. It feels like a cowardly move.
Let's go to that question which raises some sensitivities of rivalries between players. In the case of Angel Reese, who's just had to shut it down because of a wrist injury, Caitlin Clark, who's continuing to play. Rivalry that goes back to their college days, presumably, where I guess some trash talking entered in. But now it seems on some social media channels to have taken a darker turn, a more menacing turn, where race has been introduced into the conversation, where sexuality is sometimes introduced into the conversation.
The media has jumped on this bandwagon, too, trying to create a false Rookie of the Year debate.
Two of your most visible players are involved, not personally, it would seem, but their fan bases are involved in saying some very uncharitable things.
Most articles I've seen about Clark's popularity include Angel Reese or other rookies in the headlines, which is absurd.
What is Angel Reese doing on the 50 most influential people in sports figures? Are you kidding me? A woman that rebounds and shows up half naked to games?
It's all about one player, and even the commissioner seems too afraid to admit that.
The one thing that's great about the league right now, we do sit at this intersection of culture and sport and fashion and music. Like the WNBA players are really looked at now as kind of cultural icons.
True.
And when you have that, you have a lot of attention on you. There's no more apathy. Everybody cares. it is a little that Bird magic moment, if you recall, from 1979 when those two rookies came in from a big college rivalry, one white, one black. And so we have that moment with these two. But the one thing I know about sports, you need rivalry. That's what makes people watch.
WNBA Commissioner Kathy Engelbert made it clear that she believes Angel Reese is just as vital as Caitlin Clark for the league's growth.
They want to watch games of consequence between rivals. They don't want everybody being nice to one another. So the social media is different today than it was in 1979 when it didn't exist. But, you know, I always tell the players, you know, I was told a long time ago, if someone's typing something in and you wouldn't ask their advice, ignore it. So it's a balance.
Honestly, it's laughable. During the 2024 season, many fans credited Clark for the surge in popularity due to her remarkable time at Iowa under Lisa Bluter.
But certainly from a marketing dollars, but corporate partners are stepping up to endorse these players much more so than they were 5 years ago because they see the benefit of having women and diverse women representing their brand.
I agree. Rivalries are good. Manning and Brady, the prime one among them.
While playing for the Hawkeyes, she often faced off against Reese and LSU, leading to clashes between their fan bases. When they were both drafted in 2024, the league saw a significant boost in visibility. Much of the league's recent success has been credited to Caitlin Clark, and that's the bottom line. However, Engelbert tried to downplay this during her appearance on 60 Minutes, suggesting that the league's popularity comes from various stars, including Angel Reese and other rookies.
Nobody disputes that she's an amazing basketball player, but still they seem resentful and angry toward her.
It seems she's seeing data that I'm not, because that's simply not true. It feels like she's trying to maintain a narrative, especially after facing accusations of racism just last week. If she doesn't mention Reese and the other rookie, she risks backlash from some fans.
And it's resulted in physical alterations on the court that don't get called as fouls, that the girls then deny were intentional. And Caitlin Clark always takes the high road. She never, points the finger, but it happened again.
Engelbert did acknowledge Clark as an incredible player with a huge following who has attracted new fans to the league. She said, if you look at our historic season in terms of attendance and viewing, Caitlin, Angel Reese too, and Rhea Jackson, Cameron Brink, this class of rookies we will be talking about in a generation from now.
It's the fact that the reporter is not allowed to ask that question, just in general, even if this was the first time, but after a series of events where we've watched all season long, and into the postseason, Caitlin Clark get abused and taken out. I mean, even during timeouts, people are intentionally walking into her, bumping into her, doing things mid-play and after the play. And if you don't know, Christine Brennan's so woke, I don't know how she ever sleeps. So this isn't exactly somebody
She's
coming
so woke
from the Daily Wire or Fox News. So the fact that they're attacking her just shows you the WNBA continues to drop the ball on this whole issue. They got given the greatest gift of all time, this rivalry between Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark. And you use the word vitalize because you're right.
But it's clear she struggles to give Clark the full credit she deserves without bringing others into the conversation. Would we even be talking about players like Angel Reese if it weren't for Caitlin Clark's draft class? I'm not so sure. Some might argue that Clark has essentially created the spotlight for Reese. Just look at the guests on Reese's podcast lately. She seems to be thriving off the attention from Clark's critics. When Engelbert was asked why she included other rookies in discussions about the league's success, she claimed that the WNBA's growth relies on various stars, not just Clark. But honestly, it feels like she's trying to maintain a narrative. Engelbert recently faced backlash after being called a racist, so she knows that if she doesn't mention Reese and other rookies, she might face criticism from certain fans. She said, she's clearly an unbelievable player, referring to Clark, and acknowledged her significant following that has brought new fans to the league. Engelbert emphasized that no league is built around just one player, and pointed out that rivalries are essential for drawing viewers. However, many fans are now worried about Clark's safety given the intensity of the rivalry. Engelbert seems more focused on avoiding backlash than addressing real issues. Her stance on rivalries as a key to the WNBA's growth might put her in a tough spot. In early September, she was asked about the racial divide between Clark and Reese's fan bases and how it could lead to toxicity among fans. This situation has led to significant criticism of Engelbert from players who feel she hasn't adequately addressed these serious concerns. Let's be real here. This league has a strong identity, and when Engelbert talks about rivalries, it somehow turns into a racial issue. There are plenty of people who are skeptical about this situation. Caitlin Clark is getting hit hard this season, and it's hard to ignore that fact. You'd have to be blind not to see it. I think her sexual orientation might play a role too, since she doesn't fit fit into that particular club, which has had its share of drama over the years. But let's not dodge the facts. People are willing to pay top dollar to see Clark play. Her games are selling out, and fans are paying significantly more to watch her compared to other players like Angel Reese or Aja Wilson. That says a lot. Clark is the main draw this year, possibly one of the biggest attractions in sports overall. The attendance and revenue numbers back that up. When Clark plays, the viewership can be 2 to 4 times higher than when she doesn't. Engelbert's comments seem cowardly. She's not acknowledging the clear facts. And honestly, what do you think? Thanks for tuning in.
Caitlin Clark is box office. She's doing this. And instead of giving her credit, y'all tried to make it about, oh, y'all poo-pooing the old guard. Y'all never talked about the old guard like this.
Did you catch the WNBA playoffs without Caitlin Clark? Chances are you didn't, and it seems like not many others did either.
And they all stayed the course. She allowed her teammates to lead her in certain moments and calm her down in certain moments while still playing the game and being herself out there on the floor, while also dealing with a ton of BS and noise off the court.
The audience numbers plummeted from 1.8 million to a mere 161,000. That's not just a slight dip, it's a dramatic drop.
Caitlin Clark can be used as a unit of measurement from here on out when it comes to noise around the game of basketball. We will be able to in the future say, well, this compares to what Caitlin Clark had to deal with because there was so much noise and she dealt with it and she handled it.
Now we have to wonder, is the WNBA facing challenges without its latest star?
I love the point that you made about Caitlin Clark in terms of the BS that she had to deal with off the court. We got to remember she's been box office. She was the main attraction, and there were so many storylines that's been associated with her. Most recently, the whole thing with her and Cheryl Swoops, even though it really wasn't her. It was Cheryl Swoops and all this. Every time you turned around, there was something that she had to deal with.
Let's take a moment to appreciate Clark. She didn't just step into the league. She made a huge impact.
The reason I bring that up, and I love that, because as a rookie, ladies and gentlemen, put this in perspective. Caitlin Clark finished the regular season leading rookies in scoring, field goals made, three-point field goals made, assists, steals, and minutes played, and she led the league in assists and three-pointers made. Think about that for a second, and like Shannon says, ultimately, you first team, you one of those people. So we got and fourth in the league in MVP voting.
The Indiana Fever, a team that was almost off the radar, suddenly became contenders for the playoffs, all thanks to her.
They tried to minimize her, said, well, you giving her all this credit. What about the women that came before her? What the women came before her, what they did cannot be taken away. That ain't got nothing to do with Caitlin Clark. But there was a lot of people tried to make sure they keep Caitlin Clark in her place, because what you're doing, if you give her all this shine, you minimize what they done. You can't minimize what Maya Moore or Candace Parker or Lisa Leslie or Lauren Jackson or Diana Taurasi or Simone Augustus or any of the other great players. That Caitlin Clark, what she's doing doesn't minimize what they've done.
Imagine transforming from being overlooked to becoming the key player in such a short time.
But we should have been giving her the credit. We saw the ratings, we saw the merchandise sales, we saw the attendance, but y'all want to make it about something else. Oh, what about the women that laid the foundation? What about this? What about it? That ain't got nothing to do with Caitlin Clark.
However, here's the worrying part. Without Clark, the league is struggling with empty arenas and dismal TV ratings. It's as if the thrill has faded and the fans have vanished.
Caitlin Clark, unanimous Rookie of the Year. But what's even more impressive, she's first team WNBA. First.
So the big question remains, is the WNBA relying too heavily on just one player? And what happens if she's no longer around?
Reflecting back on Caitlin Clark's rookie season, I have honestly never seen a company fumble the bag so hard like the WNBA fumbled Caitlin Clark.
Stay tuned, because we're about to explore why this situation is vital for the future of women's basketball.
The effect that the Fever are having on the economy in Indianapolis, in the WNBA, in the world of sports. And frankly, it's amazing. Now, you all know the backstory. Angel Reese in college did all this and all this, mocking, of course, our girl, Caitlin Clark.
You might be asking yourself, those numbers look great, but what does it mean for the league? Let me break it down for you. Before Caitlin Clark showed up, the Indiana Fever were pretty much forgotten. Now they're a team everyone is talking about.
I think she's spectacular. I think she's going to be the biggest box office attraction in women's basketball in short order. I know it sounds like I could be a bit biased. I had the pleasure, as I've told you on several occasions, of doing an interview with her. And when I was there with her on stage to do something with her, 10,000 people showed up.
Clark didn't just elevate their game, she made them serious contenders almost overnight.
This woman is special. She is a marksman. She is the Steph Curry of women's basketball. And I understand the Cheryl Swoops of the world or anybody else. There's a lot of players that have been excellent in women's basketball throughout the best. UNESCO is obviously spectacular. We see various others as well. I remember the days of Cheryl Swoops and Cynthia Cooper and how big Lisa Leslie and how big time they all were. And I'm not taking anything away, but when you consider the evolution of the game of women's basketball.
But it's not just about what happens on the court. Clark's impact reaches well beyond the game itself.
Really intrigued because there's a league with players that feel like they should be getting the attention. Now they have center stage, but the ratings are going to go down. How far, though? That's the key.
We're witnessing record high viewership for WNBA games. And who's at the center of it all? Exactly. Caitlin Clark.
It's going to be, before the argument was the league is much more than this one girl that came into the league.
Right.
And we've established it. And hey, look at the numbers everywhere else across women's basketball. It's not just Caitlin Clark. It's all of us. And then the moment the ratings tank, they're going to come back and say, see, we were right all along. It's all the racists that follow Caitlin Clark that were watching the product, and now they're gone, and we're back with our diehards. And that's the ratings that you're seeing, actual W fans, not WNBA, actual W fans.
Let me get it right.
That's going to be the argument.
She's transformed from a player into the symbol of women's basketball.
But is that going to be a headline when they dip when she's not playing? And now they have to go through the postseason. They're going head-to-head with the NFL. We pointed that out yesterday, which isn't smart.
Think about it. When was the last time a WNBA player created this much buzz?
Numbers are going to be up year to year because Caitlin Clark wasn't in the WNBA last year. So ESPN is going to spin this as a positive that their playoffs will be much higher rated than they were a year ago, even the playoffs without Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
But because they were so low, that really isn't telling you the whole story.
Clark isn't just bringing in hardcore basketball fans. She's also drawing in people who have never watched a women's game before.
28 years, the numbers were stellar. Caitlin Clark drew a whole new fan base into it. And now the question is, because she has been eliminated, she and the Indiana Fever are eliminated after losing 2 games to the Connecticut Sun. What is the rest of the season going to look like, ratings-wise, for the WNBA? Are people still going to care? That is the question on everybody's mind. Because when you look at the numbers with Caitlin Clark there, her first playoff game, drawing 1.84 million viewers. Ridiculous numbers. The highest-rated playoff game since Game 2 of the 2000 WNBA Finals. This wasn't even just an opening round game back in 2000. This was one of the finals games. So this clearly is showing how much of an impact Caitlin Clark is having.
She's making the WNBA more relevant than it's ever been. However, this situation also raises some concerns. Clark has become such a major star in no time that it feels like the whole league is leaning on her.
But obviously, it's always important to give credit where it's due. And I think we all realize where the credit needs to be given as far as the success of this WNBA season. Caitlin Clark came in and made such an impact on how many people started to care about the WNBA. This was the highest viewed season in the history of the league.
This leads us to a key question. Is this reliance good for the WNBA? You know the saying, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Well, it seems like the WNBA has had to learn this lesson the hard way. With Caitlin Clark out of the playoffs, the league is facing a reality check, and it has everyone wondering if they've missed a golden chance. Believe me, this goes far beyond just losing a standout player. Let's take a moment to discuss some figures. Remember those crowded arenas during Caitlin Clark's games? Well, that seems to be a thing of the past. Nowadays, playoff games are seeing hardly any fans in the stands. Can you imagine walking into a place that should be filled with playoff energy, only to find it feels more like a ghost town? That's the current reality for the WNBA.